Hello and welcome to the Thursday show on Our Game. Myself, Michael Verney, alongside Shane Stapleton, or whatever way you want it. The other way, obviously. Loads of county finals to preview. I think we've 11 county finals this weekend, so an awful lot to get through. Shane, it's that great time of the year. I don't know about you, the ground is starting to change a small bit. You know it's that, even though it's maybe a bit earlier in some counties, you know it's that county final time of the year. There's almost like a feeling in the air.
Yeah, it's the time of year where joy turns to pain and pain turns to joy, and drama is coming in the last 5 and 10 minutes of games. I was even talking to Conor O'Dwyer of Upperchurch on Tipcast yesterday with Shane Brophy, and he was talking about Upperchurch going for the double this year in hurling and football. They're into the football final, having beaten Lockmore last weekend, and he said everyone in the parish was out on the pitch afterwards, and it was just a special time and all that kind of stuff. And if you take out when their previous iteration, Drumban, won the county title 128 years ago in hurling, they've never won a senior county title or even a divisional title, I think, in either code. So to be in this situation now where this weekend they're up against Killerwan and they could be in, you know, on the chase for the double, and they're probably not the only, they're definitely not the only club out there. Like, we're going to see some amount of drama in the next couple of weeks, and it's going to be brilliant.
Just on that, like, you've been in both positions as I have been. Like, the Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday after winning a county final, or even booking your place in a county final, the feeling of anticipation. And then the flip side of that, when you've been beaten in a quarter final or semi final and you're looking on at what you think you should be involved in, like, it's such a kind of a thin line, isn't it? And it's amazing the euphoria of, you know, winning a county final, or even the, you know, excitement looking forward to it, and the FOMO when you're not involved. Like, it's hard to describe. It really is, because I remember being in Thurles, was it Thurles? No, I was in Templemore doing teaching practice, and there was a fella from Thurles in there, and they were all, Thurles were after winning the county final, and he was, he'd been out the night before, and I think we were betting a semi-final by Tullamore the same year, and it's just like, someone is so high and someone else is so low, like low as a snake's belly.
Yeah, I mean, last Friday, it was a bit of a surprise birthday party for me, and a lot of the cooler lads were there. And some of them that aren't hurling with the senior team anymore, they were obviously boozing away the finest and were having great old crack. And then the cooler lads were there that are involved with the senior team, and they were still having the crack. But obviously they couldn't give it the big one. So then afterwards, as in a day or two after, you're just thinking about building up towards a big game. For example, the lads have a county semi-final on Sunday against Nafina, and you do miss those days and the anticipation. And even, I don't know, it mightn't sound like the most enjoyable thing, but even just getting your food right and your hydration right and having everything right and getting the last little gym session in and all, you know, all that sort of stuff. Whereas now you're getting that last little toffee pop in before the weekend. It's a slightly different approach.
And I've been in your house, and I know how much you love a good toffee pop.
Yeah, they're a hard bet. One of the best biscuits of all time. And I was chatting to someone yesterday. Now, I'd be a big fan of a toffee crisp, and so would this man. But we were talking about the Drifter bar. You don't see a Drifter bar.
I actually thought about Drifters not long ago, because, like, I think of Drifters, I probably think mid-90s. I just remember, like, the Drifters were dynamite now. Absolutely dynamite.
They were one of the all-time bars. Look, there's a lot of brilliant bars out there, but we're not going to do a power rankings on that, are we?
We might someday. Who knows? You never know.
We might, and tasting tests and all. Hey,
I won't lie, Shane. I'd really annoy you if we did a power rankings, because I'd have like Fry's peppermint cream, Terry's chocolate orange. I'd be throwing in all these kind of weird enough kind of ones.
Yeah, I mean, I've nothing against either of those that you've just brought up. Would you have much regard for just a Fox's Classic?
It wouldn't be up there, being honest with you. Wouldn't be up there if I'm honest. Like, I tell you what I used to love. It was a good Viscount biscuit.
Yeah. What about the knockoff ones? The ones you get in Lidl?
Sure, listen, needs must at times.
Hey, those Happy Hippos, have you had those? They're sort of a kinder job. They're a small little thing. They have bits of probably coconut or something like that on them, a bit of hazelnut filling inside them. They're ideal with a cup of tea.
I tell you what I liked back in the day was the good old Animal Bar. Iggy the Iguana and all these different names.
Leo the Lion.
Leo the Lion, absolutely beautiful. I can kind of smell a subsection podcast coming out of this potentially.
Or chocolate.
If Cadbury's or any of the boys want to jump on board, and even they can pay us through chocolate, no problem.
Hey, well, look, we're that would bring us on to maybe performance and performance coaches. And Brendan Maher's after joining the Offaly backroom team. Now I see he's after talking about it on the RTE podcast, and he was I mean, a lot of it comes down to the fact that this is an area he'd be interested in, but also he knows Johnny Kelly so well, and his brother Martin Maher, who was on the Tipperary team. I suppose it was like the early 2000s to the mid 2000s. The fact that he's involved as well, it probably makes it a bit of a no-brainer to him.
Oh, 100%. He'll also definitely be talking about it at the Reeling in the Hurling Years Bergier fundraiser this day a week. 100%. That's where you're going to get the real scoop on it. But like Brendan's only 33. He's really got his finger on the pulse as regards the inter-county game. He's obviously worked under Liam Sheedy, one of the best hurling managers around. He's worked under Eamon O'Shea as well. He would have developed an awful lot of expertise throughout his own playing career. And I know, like, from an Offaly point of view, I know Brendan's only going to be learning on the job maybe in his performance coach role, but just think of the respect that he has from players, like widely acknowledged as one of the best players Tip have ever had, and just one of the most respected players in the game, really. So I think he'll have a huge respect factor from all of the Offaly players. They'll all be able to associate with him, I suppose, as well. And I know I think he was kind of saying he's going to do a lot of one-to-one stuff and then some collective stuff as well. But like, it's a no-brainer. He's one of the best players we've seen play for Tipperary. He thinks about the game, very, very closely. He's obviously a brilliant leader as well. Like, it stands to reason probably in time that he will be an inter-county manager. You'd imagine, with those sort of leadership qualities. What was he, an All-Ireland minor winning captain, All-Ireland senior winning captain, and just some of the things he did for Borrisalee as well. Just the leadership qualities absolutely oozed out of him. So from an Offaly point of view, I think it's a nice coup for us to get someone like that. He's going to be working with his brother. He's going to be working with his former club manager. I think it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, it definitely does. The other thing is, though, that the players will kind of very quickly decide, are we getting value from this or not? So, he'll go in there, but I'm sure he'll be putting pressure on himself to make sure that he makes an impact. I mean, who wouldn't want to make an impact? If you're going in there, you want to leave a mark and feel like you're making improvements, and no doubt that'll be the plan there. What about the Dublin situation? It's a tough one for Micheál Donoghue, because Chris Crummy and Cian O'Callaghan, they're heading away travelling, but he will have Owen O'Donnell back with the hurlers next year. Now, obviously, Owen O'Donnell didn't miss any hurling this year, but maybe he wasn't at his absolute best. And I've been watching him recently for Whitehall, Colmcills, and he is obviously a great athlete and impactful. But as I watched him play in the quarterfinal against Na Fianna, I did feel that definitely hurling is where he's at his absolute best. And Dublin will definitely need him at his best next year. If Cian O'Callaghan isn't there and if Chris Crummy aren't there, not only are they going to need Owen O'Donnell at his very best, they're going to need a couple more to step up too.
Well, if you're looking at like leaders on the Dublin squad and the Dublin team, O'Donnell was obviously captain this year. He's a big leader. He's a player that can make plays during games that are inspirational. I'd say the same about Crummy, and obviously Cian O'Callaghan. You know him better than I do. Real tenacious cornerback, real tight marking cornerback. He was vice captain this year, so he obviously brings a lot of leadership to the table as well. So for Donoghue, it would have been some triple whammy of a loss if O'Donnell had stayed with the football or not committed to the hurling. So, like, at least he has him, but losing Crummy, like, Crummy's a real kind of force of nature. We saw that, the goal against he definitely got was it 1 or 2 goals he got against Galway in that 2019 game. Definitely got.
Did he win a penalty? He scored a goal. Did he win a penalty as well the same day?
He might have had, or we might be mixing up games, but there are things like he has big plays, a big physical player. He's able, like, even when he was up in the forward line, he gave Galway all sorts of trouble in that Leinster semi-final last year, and he's a big player, so he's going to be a big loss. Now, I'm not 100% sure if him and O'Callaghan are going for the full year or if it's going to be a remainder to be back for part of the year. We obviously did see as well that when Donoghue was Galway manager, if the door is open for someone like Johnny Glynn or somebody to come back in potentially for the summer, he has done that before. So if the lads are only going for 6 months or maybe 3 or 4 months or something like that, I'm sure the door will be left open there. But getting O'Donnell back with the hurlers was key, because I think psychologically, Shane, like, if he didn't commit to the Dublin hurlers, I just think that's a massive psychological blow. Like, that's a way bigger blow than Crummy and O'Callaghan taking a year out. That's Owen O'Donnell basically saying, I don't think the Dublin hurlers are good enough, or I think I should be committing to the football. So I do think at least there's a bit of a silver lining to the two lads leaving, I should say, anyway.
Yeah, and I was chatting to Keane about this on Friday night, but I was full of soup at the time, so I can't fully remember. But if you're going to Australia, I can't imagine it's just for a couple of months. But look, remains to be seen how it's going to go. Flash says, big weekend in the Limerick Senior Hurling Championship. 2 good quarterfinals with Patrick's well up against Kildimo, Palace Kenry, and Doon against Sound Liberties. Red Lad says, Crummy, a huge loss. O'Callaghan, a pretty big loss too, but I think we have a few that can play in the full back line. Now, both are massive losses. You've already outlined it there, Michael, in terms of like, you know, Crummy's been a massive leader on the team for years. Cian O'Callaghan, vice captain, been, you know, guaranteed starter for donkey's years at this stage. But there is a point that it's probably in the full back line where they have a little bit more backup. So you'd hope from a Dublin point of view that they can absorb the loss a little bit more back there, because Paddy Smith, who was playing number 6 this year, he may move back into the cornerback. Andy Dunphy can play cornerback. The likes of James Madden is a little bit versatile. John Bellew also, he established himself this year. And like, probably people might think John Bellew's 20 or something like that. He's been on the road quite a while. He played in the county final for Lucan in 2013. So you and I both like that. When players show the grit to go and establish themselves later on in their career, that's a very admirable trait at that level. So Dara Gray as well is another option. We barely saw him for Dublin at all this year. So they're still going to have defenders there. They just need to develop 1 or 2 more to take the team on for next year. Well, probably they need to discover even more than that. Again, the Currys, for example, we saw them with Nafina last year. They were quite good. They've only just come back from injury recently for Nafina, and they'll be playing against Coola at the weekend. So look, it's very easy to be negative about Dublin if you like, but I think there's plenty to work with there anyway.
There is. There's lots to work with, and as you say, if you're talking about there being a surplus in any area of the field, there is probably a surplus in defence. Like, I don't envisage Paddy Smith playing centre back for Dublin this year. I imagine him going to his best spot, which is cornerback. He's not going to dictate a game from 6, but he could definitely tie down one of their better forwards from 2 or 4. So it's going to be interesting to see when a new manager comes in as well, just whether there are any like radical ideas about where different lads might play and things like that. Maybe they'll try Owen O'Donnell at 6. It's going to be interesting to see who they'll try in different spots.
Yeah, and it could even be like if Liam Rush can he play a full season, because this season we've just seen him come back for Navina, and you can see he's moving okay. He actually played full back in the quarterfinal against St. Vincent's, because they wanted somebody to, I suppose, be able to tie down John Heatherton in the air. Now, it wasn't working brilliantly, but ultimately Heatherton moved out to centre forward, ended up getting sent off, and Nafina went on and won from there. So the Camogie All-Stars, they've gone with position nominations rather than nominating just backs and forwards. So this is something that any time you and I are picking a team of the year, Michael, we try and pick players in their correct positions. Now, there's a sort of, in hurling, some midfielders might play as a sweeper and some centre backs hold and all that kind of stuff. So it's very hard to use the traditional formation based on current positioning of players. But we do our best to pick players as they're kind of selected. The Camogie All-Stars are doing that, and I have to say I like it.
Yeah, be a big bugbear of mine and yours. I think not that a position is tied down. Like 2 and 4, I think, are very flexible, as are 5 and 7. But like, playing, picking Colm Kavanagh full back that time, that kind of thing really annoys me. Like, he never played full back at any stage in the year. That type of thing does annoy me. So at least it's going to be definitive. There won't be 3 cornerbacks picked in the full back line. I'll put it to you that way. There'll be 2 cornerbacks, and there'll be whoever played your traditional number 3, and it'll be the same. There won't be 3 wing backs picked in the half back line, or there won't be 3 centre backs picked in the half back line. It'll be 2 wing backs and your centre back. So I think that's, to be honest with you, I think it also avoids a cop-out call where you can just say, oh, sure, we'll put him or her in there. And it's just, that's not where they play it a lot of the time. When you see the 15, I'd still be traditional enough in the sense that, and I'd be a big bugbear of mine, if a guy generally plays right wing back, that he's picked will say left wing back, or even that he's put into midfield or something like that. That type of thing. I'm just not a fan of that.
I don't mind so much a right wing back being picked left wing back. I don't mind that so much, but I do.
No, but when a right wing back is picked left wing back, or maybe they're put the wrong side, shall we say, and it just looks kind of silly. Like, because just say you do have a left, like sometimes that mistake is actually made where you have a left wing back and they pick him number 5. You have a right wing back and they pick him number 7, and that thing just really annoys me, I have to say.
Yeah, well, when Steve Staunton was Ireland manager, he used to pick the left back as number 2 and the right back as number 3, and that annoyed me a little bit. So I suppose, I can't criticise you. Adrian McGrath says picking players in their positions is what led to the Wheelahan call Verney. Obviously, this is when he didn't win an All-Star, but did win a Hurler of the Year award.
That was still one of the greatest balls ups in GA history, I'd say. A lot of it was, I remember chatting Martin Brenny about it. Everybody thought Wheelaton, the vast majority of voters, as in journalists, thought Wheelaton was a shoe-in. So they ended up kind of nearly voting for somebody else because they thought he was going to get in anyway. So he ended up Hurler of the Year in 94 and not getting an All-Star. And I think he went out to the toilets fairly quickly after and nearly broke his fist off the door in rage after. That's true. Joe Arity has repeated that story several times.
Yeah, you'd be a bit frustrated with that. So what about Galway GA person Paul Bellew? Says the split season has been a godsend for clubs, and he goes, it really has been positive. He said this to the 42. Split season is a significant factor. Alternating every second weekend is firmly embedded in the county. Decoupling is firmly established as a must in the county. Planning and organisation between the hurling and football committees is at an all-time high, even with the complications from reaching the All-Ireland finalists with the inter-county team. There's been no case before the CCC in terms of adjudicating between the clash of football and hurling fixtures, even at juvenile level. Player feedback, club feedback, supporter feedback is extremely strong. Games are happening when they should be, in good weather and good pitches. Attendance is continuing to increase in both codes. Gate receipts will surpass the 1 million mark this year, which is great news. And I'd say other counties are finding that as well. And I think it's been brilliant. Like counties like Tipperary have had championship going since certainly July. There's so many counties that have had a massive amount of games all throughout the good weather of from the start of August, September, now into October as well. As a club player, it's been brilliant.
Yeah, we were the same in Offaly. Once Offaly were out, I think there was maybe 2 weeks in football and hurling. There was 2 week gap or something like that, maybe, and then we were going week on, week off. And I think it's been absolutely brilliant. We finished up last weekend with the hurling. The football was the week before. Anybody that's knocked out, you're not like waiting till around Halloween time, which maybe would have been traditional before. You're finished quite early. You have a nice long break, and I like club players like a break. Club players like a break. It's one of the most appetizing things about being a club player is knowing that you have a decent enough off season. So I think it's been absolutely brilliant. Pitches, the length and breadth of the country have been absolutely hopping during the summer, and people are mad keen to get out and go to games again. And what Paul Bellew says there is probably reflected in the vast majority of counties across the country. Just an interesting one, Shane, I wanted to bring up. I kind of briefly said it on Monday, and I just wanted to go through it a bit more now. It was just comments that Declan Laffin made, the Clock Ballycolla manager. So he's actually going to be a coach, selector, and I asked him his role with Tip, and he says coach, selector, and he says a bit of a psychologist too, with a bit of a laugh, and he's probably right. But he just talked about he's kind of old school, and he'd no problem in saying it. And I just think his quotes are interesting. I would class myself as a little bit old school in ways. I think there's an awful lot of coaches out there that are trying to make the game of hurling way too complicated. It's quite a simple game. You can dress it up and do drills and stick cones here, there, and everywhere. But the moral of the story is that you have to score goals and points, and you have to defend them at the other end. I'm a big believer in moving the ball quick. If it's on, go direct. If it's on to go direct, you go direct. If it's not, you work it through the lines. You have to be able to play a little bit of both styles now in this day and age. But a lot of coaches irritate me. I won't lie. Where do you stand on, is hurling a simple game?
Well, look, first of all, how old is Declan Laffin? He's in his 40s, isn't he? Give or take. Because, he was with Lockmore for a long time. So the point that I'm coming to is there's a very different interpretation of what old school is for somebody who's maybe 70 or 80 versus what somebody in their 30s or 40s might consider old school. So I think you can be old school in terms of like, you don't want to have a million cones on the pitch. You don't want to move the ball, laterally over and back and have, I suppose, constipated hurling as Gerlach Nan once called it. But I think like being real old school would be every ball is hitting the clouds and playing the formation of 6-2-6. So I think I can kind of get on board with what he's saying. If he says old school in that, let's not overdo it and have paralysis by analysis, you need a bit of both. So I'd say he's probably on the money in terms of what kind of works this year. But at the same time, you can't not look at Limerick and think everything they're doing is, it's common sense hurling what Limerick are doing. Like, think of how often, Like we had trials there the other day, and I was watching some young lads, and they're fresh and raw and all that kind of stuff, and some of them are, you can see, obviously very talented. But when you're a young player, you often just throw the ball up and get blocked down, because maybe you're used to playing in the club championship where some of the other players are weaker, and you can do that. But then after a while, you have to be coached to do the simple things right over and over again. And I think that's important, to just coach doing the simple thing right all the time. And if you have to take a hand pass, take a hand pass. If you have to move it back, you have to move it back. But when you can, move it forward. So look, that would be my thought on it. I think, I might think, yeah, I like the idea of being a progressive coach or manager or thinker about hurling. But that mightn't be too far, aligned from the way he's thinking too.
Yeah, no, I think he's not old school. He's not like 70 or 80, shall we say. He's not, talking about 50s and 60s. His old school is actually quite new school. And I think it's what he's actually talking about is maybe hurling been a lot more instinctive, shall we say. A lot more instinctive, and giving players a bit of creativity to do to play the game as they see it, shall we say. Because a lot of times I think players are overcoached, particularly at club level, and we end up seeing a lot of this tippy-tappy stuff and going across the pitch, but they're not really sure what they're doing. They're somewhat straitjacketed by the tactics that they're been told to play, and there's nothing off the cuff anymore. And I tell you one thing about Clockbalacalla, they definitely play as they see it. They go short and go through the lines when they need to, and they play long when they need to. So it'll be interesting to see if that aligns with if that potentially aligns with the way Liam Cahill and Mikey Bevins and Pádraig Maher see Tipperary playing next year.
Yeah, it's kind of like simple when you can, but at the same time, look at all the marginal gains you can get. If that's a short sideline to somebody, rather than turning good possession, which is a sideline ball, into 50-50 by cutting it 90 yards down the field. Why not do a short sideline? Teams have been doing it. I always remember the 2014 league final in Thurles. Twice during the game, TJ Reid cut a sideline into Richie Hogan's hand. He was 10 yards away. Hogan obviously had done a dart left and right to create room, popped it back to TJ, and he threw it over the bar at least one out of the two times. Wasn't it back in 2013? Clare were actually doing the short sidelines as well. So it's kind of amazing that every team hasn't been doing this for the last 10 years. But Limerick looked at it and said, well, obviously Paul Kinnerk was involved with that Clare team. Let's do that. It's guaranteeing possession in a lot of cases, or certainly a higher retrieval rate. So all teams should be doing that by right. So it's marginal gains across the board. Adrian McGrath says, what's Tony Kelly's position, gents? He plays everywhere he wants to, therefore he can't win an All-Star. You're like two old farts in the corner of the pub. I mean, I want to pick as we said, want to pick them as close as possible to the old positions. But yeah, like we did our team of the year, we had Tony Kelly in it. Obviously, you kind of have to be a little bit more flexible in the forward line, and obviously the likes of the centre-back position.
He's a bit of an outlier, I would say. Can you think of many more lads like that? Where
Austin Gleeson?
Yeah, maybe. And even the fact that he ended up wing back against Clare as well. He's probably even more fluid than Tony Kelly. But there were definitely long stages against Wexford where Tony was playing full forward. There were probably long stages in other games where he played centre forward and wing forward. So listen, that doesn't
Kyle
mean
Hayes?
Yeah, but it was generally 11. Well, outside of the Cork game, it was generally 11, apart from obviously the games where he started wing back. But
and full forward.
Yeah, it doesn't mean that we're going to not pick a guy who is one of the best six forwards in the country. Definitely not. I don't know. I get a bit of enjoyment out of being called an old fart at times, because I am a bit of traditionalist at times.
Yeah, and you're stink as well. So there's two good reasons. We have a lot to come on the show today. We're going to preview all the county championships. Is it 11 county finals are on this weekend?
Yeah, 11. Yeah, mostly football. All football actually. There's no hurling final to the best of my recollection this weekend. I think it's all football.
Yeah, I think you're right. There's plenty of semi-finals and quarterfinals in hurling. Actually, do you know what? The Meath hurling final is on this weekend, and I think the Down one is also on. You have to crowbar some lads in. That's true. That's absolutely true. We'll start off with the Kilkenny Championship. We're going to have David Fitzgerald of Ina Kilnamona coming on soon. Obviously, Clare player as well. So we're looking forward to chatting to him. But let's start off with the Kilkenny County Championship. We already know that James Stephens are through to the final after beating Dixborough in the first semi-final. Ballyhale against Tullaroan is on this weekend. Both teams going well, and some of the goats of Kilkenny hurling are going to be involved.
This is a belter of a game, Shane, potentially. I know the easy analysis is just to think that Ballyhale will win and maybe win comfortably in the end, but Like, we'll go through some of the matchups now in a minute. We'll actually might just jump into it. I think we have David just waiting in the wings. So when he's ready to go, we'll bring him in. But this Kilkenny game, we're definitely going to focus on it a lot. And just the fact that the game was delayed, the Village are already waiting. The Village are sitting pretty in a lovely position there, where they're in a county final. They can, Seamus Dwyer and Brian Cody and Peter Barry and John Sugar can go down and look at the game on Sunday and really take everything in. And already think they'll probably train that morning. I'd say the Village will. They'll have they'll probably play their last in-house game that Sunday. It's an amazing the contrast in preparation for the two teams. The Village will have 3 or 4 days to get over the semi-final. They'll have trained midweek. They'll come back, probably train Friday, probably train tomorrow, have a good session Sunday, and they'll have loads of information available to them. I'm sure they'll have a stats man, video man, and by Monday morning they'll have a load of information available to them. Who that information is on, we'll see on Sunday. But it's going to be a fascinating semi-final. I think we can bring David in there now. David, how are you?
Well, lads, how's the fun?
David.
Good. Delighted to have you on, Dave. Thanks a million for coming in. Have you gotten over the club disappointment yet? We were just talking about club seasons, lads that are flying high and looking forward to semi-finals and finals, and the contrast in emotions of lads that are unfortunately looking from afar. I'm sure you'd much rather still be involved in the semi-finals this weekend.
Yeah, absolutely. Last week or 2 weeks ago against Hero was a bit of a disaster on our behalf, but yeah, they were full value for their win, and they're probably looking strong now for the weekend against the Bridge.
Just on that, David, yeah, they were outstanding that weekend, and you've obviously seen Shane O'Donnell at pretty close quarters. That's as close as you get to a guy nearly been unstoppable on a given day. Like last year, we probably weren't sure if he was going to be hurling again, and it's just been his 2022 so far has been absolutely outstanding. And you obviously felt the brunt of it, unfortunately, 2 weeks ago.
We did. Yeah, probably gave him far too much space, but saying that, how economical he was with possession, the shots he got away, the goal, he created another goal. I suppose since he came back, especially with Clare this year from concussion, the form he's been in, he's one of the few players probably around that if they leave down their hurley for a period of time and take it back up again, they'll have lost nothing. He'd probably even be sharper, if anything.
Yeah, that's a frustrating thing, isn't it? Because there's only a handful of guys in the country can do that. He was studying in Harvard, wasn't he, for 6 months, and he came back. He had about 3 weeks of training done, and I think he was nearly man of the match against Waterford in the first round of the round robin in 2019.
Yeah, it's just his nature, I suppose. He same with this year. Like, he came back whenever it was at March, and within a week or two, you were like, this lad he's on a different planet. But yeah.
David, when you look back over the season that you had with Clare, at times people were talking about you being the second best team in the country, and of course the semi-final didn't go your way. But now that you look back on the season, having had a couple of months to reflect on it, how would you review it?
Yeah, obviously Munster was good in terms of we got out of the group was our first goal, and then obviously the getting to the final was a bonus. When you get to a final, you want to win it. We didn't win it. Then getting back to Croke Park again was a positive, but the only currency is actually having silverware at the end of the year, and we didn't do that. So it was obviously a disappointing end, not to have won a Munster final or to have won a semi-final.
What was it like playing those games against Limerick? Because the physicality just seemed like it was on another level from what we were seeing.
Yeah, the Munster final especially, I thought that the ref did a great job in terms of letting the game flow, which as players is what you want. And yeah, the crowd was great, atmosphere, everything. It was just a great occasion to play in. But unfortunately, as I said, the result didn't go our way. Yeah,
and do you think obviously you didn't have a great start against Kilkenny in that All-Ireland semi-final. Do you think the loss of John Conlon had a huge bearing on how things went? Or I often think during the first half you were soloing through a hand pass, was it to Aaron Shanaher? And I don't know whether he just didn't go to it and try wait for it to bounce or whatever. If the goal had to go in, maybe that would. Well, okay then. But do you think that if you had to get a goal, then it might have got you going again, or was the Conlon loss that unsettled things?
Yeah, John was obviously a massive loss. He was having a great year. He's a rock back at 6. But yeah, like you said, Kilkenny were obviously excellent on the day and they dismantled us in the first half. But saying that, like you said, if we'd taken a goal chance, I think we'd humongous amount of wides as well in that first half. And if we'd taken half of those going into half time, you just don't know in the second half how things play out. But yeah, on the day we were below par.
Michael?
Just a word, David, about if you go back through a lot of teams that have really thrown it down to Limerick in the last couple of years, there's been almost like a physical toll thereafter in the remainder of the season. So if you look at, would say even Kilkenny in 2019 brought crazy levels of physicality against Limerick. One of the best performances in recent years. Were probably really flat in the All-Ireland final. Would say Yee really threw it down to them in the Munster final this year, brought them all the way to extra time. We're probably a bit flat against Wexford, and even we're probably a bit flat going into the All-Ireland semi-final. Like, what's the physical toll like to really go toe-to-toe with Limerick like Yee did? What's the physical toll on bodies, we'll say, in the week, 10 days, 2 weeks even after a game like that?
To be honest, I thought we recovered well because the way the season's gone now, you've a game every 2 weeks or whatever, every week sometimes. So you're with S&Cs and stuff, they're always monitoring loads and stuff like that. So I felt we were still physically in a good state. Obviously, yeah, like you said, Wexford was flat. So was the game against Kilkenny, flat again, but subconsciously, no, we were in a good place. So it's hard to put your finger on it.
So
sorry, Shane, yeah, just on your own year, David, obviously ended disappointingly from a collective point of view, but you must have been very happy with your own performances, particularly. I think you didn't make the 26 in Clare's last game in 2021. Would I be right in saying that?
Yeah, the game before against Wexford, yeah. Personally,
look at the difference. Like, you look at the difference in a year. Like, is there anything like you did even in the off season I presume that maybe stung, maybe even not been in the 26. But like, first question is, how satisfying was 2022 from a personal point of view? And secondly, were there any particular reasons why you maybe brought your game to another level this year?
Oh, it's hard to put your finger on it. Like you said, last year was disappointing. Obviously, this year getting in the starting 15 was good. Nailing down a place, that's probably half of it. Just getting into the team and then being able to perform. But as a group, I thought we performed well throughout Munster. So I think the group grew as a collective, and obviously having Peter back and Shane back were massive for the group.
David, I often wondered how long did it take to settle on a position for you? Because we've seen you in the back line, seen you midfield. You're wearing number 8, but it feels like you're playing in the half-forward line. Was that one of the things, a bit like Ozzie Gleeson in a way, that he's so versatile that it's hard to actually nail down a position because you keep getting thrown wherever there's maybe an issue? Like, has that always been something for you in terms of like settling on one position?
Probably to a degree, yeah. With club and stuff as well, I've played backs and forwards. Same with the county. I've played nearly every position on the pitch, probably bar the full forward line at this stage. But like I said, getting into the team for any player is half the battle. Then being able to perform.
Adrian McGrath, David reckons he still has a lump on the side of his leg from your dad hitting him a clip in the 90s. Accidentally, he reckons. It's amazing.
No comment.
You never forget getting cleaved by someone anyway. Definitely not.
David, do you remember, what are your memories of growing up and like getting your first interest in hurling? Was it the likes of watching your father, or were you too young to see him hurling?
Yeah, I would have been younger. You probably remember Tony Carmody from Ina. He would have been probably the marquee guy back in the day from our side. The likes of him, Ron O'Looney as well. Even just club guys, Dermot Lynch, stuff like that. Just grew an interest from there, really.
Mm. And were you into other sports as well, or was it mainly hurling?
Bit of Gaelic football, yeah, rugby, but nothing major, yeah.
Yeah.
Were you always 6'5" odd, or did you take a sprout at some stage? Or I'd imagine the rugby clubs would have been on to you, and a few other sports, even basketball potentially.
No, I was actually relatively late. I'd say from 16 onwards, kind of started growing then.
It's a handy thing in the modern game to be 6'5" and fairly athletic, shall we say?
Yeah, you're prone to more abuse though when you can't win your own ball or whatever. So
Really?
just on that one actually, because I'm only 5'10" or so I generally get a bit of sympathy from referees at times, particularly if you're playing up in the forward line or that. But is it more difficult for a big man? I know Aidan O'Shea said this before. Is it more difficult for a big man to win a free? Does a referee almost think that he or she should be able for a bit more abuse because of their size? Or have you found that down through the years?
Not necessarily, no. I just maybe some smaller guys are probably better placed to engineer a free, or they know the knack of, we'll say, dropping their head or lifting their arms at the right time, stuff like that. But no.
Can I do a bit of a quick Q&A with you, David? We do this with people at times. Just quick fire answers, as short or as long as you like, really. But what do you remember of your first time ever being at Croke Park? This can be as a player or supporter or whatever.
2002 All-Ireland final,
Okay.
which obviously wasn't good against Kilkenny again. So,
do you remember DJ's point?
I do. Baker down the sideline. Yeah, it was a touch of class.
Yeah. Who's your favourite player of all time?
Jerry Quinn, maybe.
Right. Okay. That kind of says a lot about a man, the type of player that he identifies with or loved. Who's been your toughest opponent and why?
Austin Gleeson. Probably self-explanatory, really. He's gifted.
What's the team you most like to beat?
Anyone in Munster, really. Yeah. From a county
Tipperary, go on. Everybody hates it. Everybody hates
so competitive.
Yeah, well, look, I would have said, most people would say Tipperary, but surely a Clare man would be saying Limerick, I would have thought.
Yeah, Limerick, Tip. Anyone really, because it's so competitive. Probably politically correct answer, but there you go.
What's your proudest day in GAA? This could be club, county, college, whatever.
Probably last year with the club going on such a run and getting to a county final, our first ever, probably sticks out. Obviously disappointing we didn't win, but it was a good experience getting there.
What's the biggest disappointment of your career?
Ooh. We'll go Munster final 22.
Okay, yeah. Geez, you were so close.
So close, yeah.
Yeah. What was your view of Tony Kelly's sideline?
Outrageous.
Yeah, like, did you think it was over when he hit it? What was your angle like on it?
No, I was. Suppose we were trying to, even as a forward, if you were looking for the short one and he found you, there was still absolutely nothing on. So he took on the probably 20% shot and he still got it.
Okay. Who's the joker on the Clare panel?
Ian Galvin.
Is he? Why?
Just he's a character. He's one of the dying few left.
Okay. Who's the best trainer?
Best trainer, probably Conor Cleary, I'd say. Just he's an animal.
And who's the best dressed? Do you know if worst dressed is going to follow it?
Best dressed.
Yeah.
I would go Aaron Shanahan.
Okay. And the worst?
Mark Rogers, maybe.
You'd think the young lads now, is he sporting the boot cuts or something? Is that what they're wearing out in Scariff?
Yeah, he'd be casual enough now.
Yeah.
Probably been harsh on him there, but yeah.
You have to do it to somebody.
Exactly.
Who loves the media? Who loves the media attention?
Ooh, David Reid.
Really? Okay.
Get him on next week.
Yeah. Who thinks that the women loved him?
Don't know. Again, Mark Rogers maybe. One of the younger lads.
There are two more. What's a player from another sport that you most admire?
Player from another sport. I like football or soccer, probably Kai Havertz or someone, I don't know.
Yeah. And then final one, what manager from another sport do you admire?
Ooh, Pep Guardiola.
Okay. Michael, do you want to take over?
Yeah, David, I think I remember you doing a Dream 7-a-side for a programme where you picked 7 Tony Kellys. I think that was you. I'm fairly sure it was anyway.
No, I think that was 3 meter. That was Peter.
Oh, that was Peter. Sorry, but just
Yeah.
on Tony, and I know you mentioned about that point in the Munster final, and we'll probably chat about the two semi-finals in a minute. But just talk to me about some of the things that he can do. Like we see in matches, like what Tony Kelly can do. But imagine even what he does in training is even on a different level to what he's doing in games. You're probably seeing it every training you go to, and then you go and play Ballier, and he does something mad as well. But he just seems like he's nearly capable of doing anything on his day.
Yeah, he's obviously naturally very gifted. He gets on a lot of ball. It's just that he can find space from anywhere, especially in club games. You often see players trying to man mark him, and they might do well for X amount of the game, and somebody you might come away afterwards and be like, geez, Tony was quiet. And you look at the score sheet, he's gotten 4 or 5 from play. He's just capable of finding space from anywhere, really. And his striking is so good. His pace, he's got everything.
Is that like an instinct thing, like being able to find space, even been instinctive to know where space is going to be, instinctive to know even where a ball is going to break at a given time?
It is, yeah, to a degree, but in fairness to him, his work rate is really good on top of that. So it's probably, while you might say it comes down to a look, he probably makes his own look at times.
Yeah, I was thinking the Cratloe and Ballier game, like Podge and Tony Kelly both been on the field. I was thinking 2013, they were both in line for Hurler of the Year. I think if the game didn't go to a replay, Podge would have probably won Hurler of the Year. How's he playing at club level at the moment? I mean, he was obviously brilliant for Clare there for years, not involved anymore. He's with the footballers. Does the game come down to more than just these two lads, though? And who else does it come down to?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Back to Podge. Podge is having an unreal season for Cratloe. He's been one of their standout guys every game this year. He's popping up with scores. He's creating scores. He's winning his own ball. He's just causing problems for defenses. But yeah, like you said, it obviously comes down to a lot more guys. The Cratloe half forward line this year of Carl McInerney, McGrath, and I think Podge, they kind of interlink. They're all three of those guys don't even need to explain. They're all top intercounty forwards on their day. Rian Considine in the full forward line is also going very well. So, and then sure, Diarmuid Ryan had a great year at 6 for them. Then on the flip side, Ballier lost to them last year. They've obviously Tony. I think Gary Brennan might be back for them. There's talk of that. So if they've him back, he's a machine. Intercounty standard hurler as well. And then they're just physically very well conditioned all over the pitch. They're athletic. So it's a very 50-50 game.
Yeah, I did hear that about Brennan because Clondegad got knocked out last week. So if you were to call these two games, Aero Guinness against 6 Mile Bridge and Cratloe Ballier, would you find it easy to call either of these games? Are they 50-50?
Completely 50-50. I don't know what you think, but yeah, it's very 50-50. In fairness, this year, the 4 best teams have made the last 4, and all with a very good chance of winning.
Just on Ballier, David, how difficult are they to play against? They obviously have a good sprinkling of footballers in there, probably including Gary and Pierce Lillis and a few more. Like they hold on to possession really well. They're able to ground you down. I was down at that county final last year. I'd imagine it was a frustrating enough game to play in because they're just very, very cute in possession. Big physical force of a team. And they're a classic club that seem to eke every ounce out of themselves. I'd imagine they're not an easy prospect to come up against.
No, they've bits of everything. They're big, strong, like their half back line's powerful. Jack O'Brien is flying as well at 6. Brandon O'Connell's excellent wing back. Yeah, like you said, they can mix it. They can play long ball. They can win their own ball, DC inside, but they can also play pop passes around the middle. Find Tony. Tony does the rest. Gary Brennan, Aaron Griffin, even corner forwards. He's a footballer as well. He's having a great season. And
even big Niall DC as well, knocking around there too. They've got DC, yeah. They can hurt you in a lot of different ways, can't they?
Yeah, they can.
David, just to ask you about the quarter-final against Aero, and the game was obviously stopped for a long period for Jason McCarthy. I mean, what are your thoughts on that, and how's Jason doing now?
Yeah, obviously very tough. What was it? Nearly an hour he was on the ground, which was very unfortunate. He's doing all right. He's an operation coming up, but he's a hardy guy, so hopefully he'll bounce back. He's always been a warrior for both club and county. So yeah, fingers crossed all goes well for him.
Yeah, is the prognosis okay, or?
Don't actually know how dislocated ankle and fractured whatever. So it's not good. But
Yeah,
he's a tough guy. So
we've had a few people commenting in the past about Aina Kilnamona. Do people sometimes call it Ainamona, or is that
I
nonsense?
think that's just
yeah,
you, Shane, to be honest with you.
there's a lot. There's the combo, yeah, as well as is a popular one. But yeah.
Yeah, but that would normally be someone was slating you that they call you the combo, is it?
Not really, no.
No?
That could be a headline in a paper after a game, or it's just a reference.
Yeah, okay. And after you'd done so well last year, must be just massively disappointing that the season ended as abruptly as that.
Yeah, this year, like last year, we got on a bit of a roll. I think this year, a lot of people probably didn't see from the outside. We had a lot of injuries. To key players, Keith White, Kevin Eher, Conor Hagerty, all of those guys basically missed the entire season, who were really good players for us the last couple of years. But saying that, we never got to the pitch of it this year, and you obviously saw that 2 weeks ago. Just Airog's intensity, they beat us probably every breaking ball, etc. So,
and you're just talking about Jason McCarthy there with his injury. Aidan McCarthy last year with the concrete lintel falling on his leg. I mean, yeah, like, was he back towards top form? And I know he was involved in player training before the season ended, but obviously the games came too quickly for him. But is he back near his best form?
Yeah, he had a tough time as well, but in fairness to him, he rehabbed himself really well, and he was our best player club wise all season. So yeah, he'll be chomping at the bit for once Clare returns to get back in.
Just on that, and with going back with Clare next year, David, having seen how close you can get to Limerick on a given day, I'd imagine there's a craving to get back to that level and probably just develop that consistency that you had through Munster that maybe left you maybe in the All-Ireland stages. I'd imagine there's a big craving to get up to that level and stay there.
Yeah, there is, but I suppose Munster, as I mentioned, is so competitive, and the home and away element is unreal. Going down to away grounds, trying to beat teams there is really difficult, and it's nearly, obviously with the exception of Limerick, the last few years, everyone kind of beats everyone. So it's kind of the beauty of it. But yeah, like you said, it would be great to try and qualify again next year.
Can I just ask you as well, is it ever annoying that your name is Davy Fitz and there's already one like Davy Fitz and Clare? Would you get many phone calls and texts? I know Davy changes his phone every 6 months from what I could see anyway, but is that a kind of a funny one in Clare?
Not really. Got the odd text about challenge games or whatever, but no hate mail or no fan mail, so all good.
Can I ask you just then about Brian Lohan? What does he bring to this Clare panel? Obviously, you've been involved for a number of years at this stage, but what has he brought that all of a sudden now you're back among the leading contenders again? And I know you said next year is going to be tough, of course it is, but what's he brought?
That's really, you probably know his personality. He's steely determination. He's obviously was one of the best Clare has ever produced, but probably one of the best ever fullbacks. So his understanding and reading of the game is right at the top. So yeah, no, he's really brought a new edge, I suppose, last year and the year before.
Okay, well, Michael, have you got anything further?
No, I think we've grilled them hard enough. If we were to put your head on the block, David, for the 2 games at the weekend, what would your final prediction be? I'm probably going to go with a Ballier and a Bridge final.
Yeah, there's a lot of talk of that. I actually fancy Airog to come out on that side, and yeah, it's a complete toss-up then between the other two. The only thing is Cratloe have beaten them already, so maybe Ballier might have a say in that.
Yeah, I'm going to go for a Ballier-Airog final myself in this one. Well, look, brilliant to have you on, David. Really appreciate you taking the time, and hopefully we'll be chatting to you again soon.
No worries, Les. Cheers. Take it
Dave.
easy.
Thanks a minute. Good man.
Okay, so brilliant to have David on there. So, yeah, those Clare games are going to be crackers this weekend.
And they're hard call. They are a hard call. Like Airog, like Aina Kilnamona probably stunned Airog last year after Airog knocked out the Bridge. So they're on a bit of a mission. They obviously won the football last year, didn't they? But they're obviously on a mission now. And saying that, the Bridge are probably on a mission because they were going for 3 in a row before Airog stopped them last year. And they obviously had a few injuries coming into that game. And if Gary Brennan is back with Ballyea, which it looks like he is, he was obviously just focusing on football, but he's doing a bit of a Nolan O'Donnell and jumping back in with the hurlers when the football is over, except vice versa. He'll be a massive addition. Mightn't necessarily start, but will be a huge player coming in for 20 minutes. Just that aerial ability and athleticism. I'm probably still going to go for Ballyea and the Bridge.
Yeah, okay, well, those games are going to be crackers. Ballyhale Shamrocks against Tullaroan will be also. I'm thinking you've got your TJ Reeds against your Pádraig Walshes, your young Tommy Walshes against your Colin Fennellys, your Shane Walsh has been picked up by your Joey Holdens. There's going to be some great matchups here.
Yeah, and one of the most interesting matchups will probably be a player that you didn't mention, but who picks up Garrod Dunn from a Ballyhale point of view would be really, really interesting, because he's probably been, like, Shane Walsh has been brilliant, but Garrod Dunn is the real up-and-comer there. He's very, very dangerous. He's under 20, I think, the next 2 years. Was on that under 20 team this year with Kilkenny, but the fair chance of him being called up early, I'd say, by Derek Ling, who obviously knows probably more than most what he can do. What the matchup is there, you probably would imagine Joey Holden would pick up Shane Walsh, I'd say.
Yeah. You might see Darren Mullen pick him up, because where Darren did the man-marking job on Desi Hutchinson in the All-Ireland final. So, and I
think Darren had a bit of a knock and might have missed the last day. So, but saying that, he had a knock coming into the All-Ireland club final and ended up marking Desi Hutchinson. So if he's back fit, he could just immediately come in there. Then from a Tullaroan point of view, like, there are a lot of guys they're going to have to stop. There really, really are a lot of guys going to have to stop. And Ballyhale are probably going to have to be a bit below par. But I have to say, to me, like, this is the game of the weekend in any code. I think this is going to be really, really tight. I'm hoping it is anyway, and I think it will be. And I think Tullaroan will bring them right down the stretch. Like, Ballyhale will probably just have enough. I think Tullaroan are going to have to be leading by 4 or 5 coming down the stretch. I don't see them winning a game that's 50-50 or level-ish coming down the stretch. I think Tullaroan are going to have a small bit of a buffer on their side coming down the stretch, because Ballyhale, one thing for certain is Ballyhale will definitely come strong at the end. They've too much class not to come strong at the end.
Yeah, like Owen Cody, Adrian Mullen, TJ Reid, Colin Fennelly, so on and so forth. And like maybe Brian Cody will be back available to play as well. Joey Cuddihy, there's, and even what's the guy that's been introduced into the forward line recently? He looks quite good as well. Is it Nicky?
You have me there.
Short.
You have me there. Yeah, I saw the name in the group stages as well.
Yeah.
Joe Butler are one of the lads who come in there. But it just shows as well that they're not stagnant either. There are a couple of guys ready to come in, and probably what they're on do. Niall Short on the ball. And that's that's a great sign for them. No more than Ballygunner having the likes of Patrick Fitzgerald coming in. It's great to have a new player coming in, energising and freshening things up there. But yeah, I think that's going to be a belter of a game.
Yeah, Cassius King says Darren Mullen was togged the last day and done the warm-up, so not too far away, I'd imagine. Joe Butler adds in that Ballyhale do their own thing and play their own game. Not too much matchups by Ballyhale. The intermediate semi-final, Thomastown go into their semi-final against Carrickshock as favourites, but they'll need a big display. And I mean, obviously we had Richie Power doing the Thursday shows with Kieran Carey throughout the championship summer as well. So he's having a great year as manager.
He is. He's having a right good year. Obviously over his home club, which brings a certain pressure with it as well, and they're trying to get back up. Obviously, this is going to be really, really interesting. So you have two right good semi-finals, Thomastown and Carrickshock. Thomastown obviously had Henry over them a couple of years ago. I think they have JJ Farrell is back involved, was back at full forward last weekend. He's obviously a big player for them. It's funny, like, you talk about a player maybe disappearing off the inter-county radar. I remember he was Leinster Player of the Year.
2015.
2015. And
he got the Pearce Medal. I think that's what it was called, the Pearce Medal.
Yeah, I don't think he started the championship game for Kilkenny after that. Noel Connors kept him really quiet in that All-Ireland semi-final, I remember. And I'm not sure if he started another championship game for them, but obviously a very potent player at club level. This is going to be a tight game, really, really tight game. Thomastown have been knocking on the door without getting over the line. They're obviously beaten by Glenmore last year. Probably just favour Thomastown in that one. And then on the other side, you have Roar Innersteig and Danesfort. And the Roar have obviously Dara Joyce back with his AFL duties, finished for now. It's going to be interesting to see whether, while he's home, Derek Ling has a conversation with him, whether there's a potential for maybe him to go in with a Kilkenny squad. I don't know. I probably think that ship may have sailed because
like he's 25 or 26, isn't he? And he has indicated that he'd like to head back out to Melbourne just to see are there other opportunities for him, which of course you couldn't begrudge him. But the other thing is, like, if you look at the players that have come back from the AFL after a few years away and try and make an impact with their club teams, you know, when they've had minimal amount of time to gel back in, get the game plan, just get the feel of the ball and the flow of the game back again. I mean, I don't want to single somebody out really, but James Madden didn't really excel for Ballyboden last week. His kicking was a little bit off. A couple of times in the second half, he had shots and hit them wide. Like Mark O'Connor, it's going to be a big ask for him playing for Dingle this weekend, assuming he starts. Even when I saw Conor Nash coming back from the AFL and playing for Simonstown about 5 years ago, like he was flying across the turf, but wasn't exactly on top form. Tommy Walsh coming back from the AFL before that. Even just running on different pitches that are, you know, getting soggier as it goes on through the winter now versus what you'd imagine is pretty firm turf over in Australia most of the time. It'd be a big ask for him to be really impactful for the Roar here. I'm not sure how he's played, if he's played in recent weeks, but big ask. And I think it's much easier to come back and re-assimilate into a football team than it is for a hurling team. You know, we already talked to David Fitzgerald about Shane O'Donnell coming back after injury and having the touch. That's fine if it's after 1 year out. But if you've been away most of the time over the last 5 or 7 years or whatever it is, it's tougher still.
And you can have your pucks and be pucking down in wherever in Australia all you like, but it's when that ball is around your feet and it's the hurling is. I just don't know if there's any game like hurling where I don't think you need the same type of match fitness for football or soccer or anything like that. I just think hurling, the movements are so varied, sharp, turn at different speeds. You're down low picking a ball, you're up high picking a ball. It's very, very hard to replicate that. But he's playing at intermediate level, which is a help as well. If you're thrown in at senior level against Ballyhale, it's so at that level, you just don't have time to breathe. If your touch is in any way off, you're gone. The ball drops.
Yeah, Mark Keane actually for Ballygiblin last year came back and drove them to glory with at junior level. So yeah, your point is absolutely.
Yeah, at that sort of level, I'd say as well. But yeah, the transition from Mark Keane is a bit younger as well, and wouldn't have been out there as long. Would have been mid-20s is tricky coming back at that age. But obviously, you have on the Roar side, you have Kieran Joyce, Dara Joyce. On the Danesfort side, you still have the two Hogans, and you obviously have Paul Murphy as well. Interesting to see whether a conversation has happened between Richie Hogan and Derek Ling yet, or what he's going to do going forward. Like the last couple of years have been difficult for him, like very, very limited game time, with his back injury flaring up an awful lot. And obviously, as a result of your back, you're going to have other little muscle injuries as well. So it's going to be interesting to see what he does going forward. I think I wouldn't be surprised if he stepped away now, just because it's kind of, when you have a relationship, and not to say he had an unbelievable relationship with Brian Cody, I don't know that, but you have an understanding with a manager that this is what I need to do, or maybe I won't be able to do X, Y, or Z, but I'll be ready when push comes to shove. But what you've seen it as well, but when a new manager comes in, you just don't necessarily get that. And I know Derek Ling has played with him, but it's different. You kind of have to set those boundaries in place again, and it can be quite tricky. So I wouldn't be surprised if he stepped away, but just an unbelievable hurler. Yeah,
well, look, if he gets, and it's going to be very hard to get 100% fit when you're gone 34, but if he's 100% right, I think there's definitely a role for him somewhere in there. And I wonder, will he ask Colin Fennelly about coming back? Speaking with Colin Fennelly in the past, it's hard to imagine that he would, but look, you just don't know. And then, of course, TJ Reid, the experience is going to be there as well. We'll talk now about Tipperary. The semi-finals are on this weekend, and I was doing Tipcast yesterday and previewing with Shane Brophy a little bit about the Drum and Inch versus Killadangan match. And here's a little bit of what he said, and we'll come back and talk more about it.
Willie Connors had lost 6 months this year with a leg injury. Instead of playing him corner forward, is he not better off maybe around the middle as a third midfielder where he's likely maybe to drift into the play, get on the ball and bring others into the play? I think that would serve them better. I think put Paul Flynn back at the edge of the square rather than starting him a wing forward, and go play to your strengths. Maybe stick Billy Seymour in beside him and go 2 for 2 and allow Brian Mallochny that sort of the drift and roll maybe around the half forward line. I just think they need to. There's definitely an element of freshness to them, but I just think they were, particularly the forward line, they were very, very disappointing against Clonoulty. And if they're you're up against the energy of the likes of Fintan Purcell and Podge Campion and all these guys, the Michael Campions that Drum will bring. Like Drum and Inch will just carry the ball back up the field, and like they have too many good forwards to that for Kildangan will maybe that Kildangan have to try and deal with to try and slow them down.
Yeah, so I was just trying to think of some of the potential matchups that we might see in this game, and a couple of them involve the Campions, and I'm thinking maybe Joe Gallagher against Podge Campion, put the puckouts down on top of them. And then another one, Ty Gallagher, will John Campion look to stick to him and try and shut down his play, because he's obviously been so influential this season?
Yeah, like they're likely, or maybe Drum might be going on a different midfielder and maybe allow John Campion maybe to do a bit more of a breaking forward role. He's very, very good for getting 2-3 points a game as well. So like there are, I don't think either side will get too bogged down on matchups.
Yeah, at the same time, you do have to kind of get bogged down on matchups as well, because if you're Kildangan, you certainly don't want to have your championship chances taken away by Seamus Callan. So he's going to have to be marked. I mean, Boris Lee tried to mark him. Obviously, other teams tried to mark him. And even though he's not dominating every minute of every game, he is coming up with big scores and big moments. So, I mean, I look at the Kildangan team. I'm not entirely sure who they're going to put on him, because they'll probably want Alan Flynn to be free. Maybe they put someone like Decky McGrath on him. Maybe even... look, I'm just not entirely sure who they'll put on him, but you do have to nail him down.
For a player like that, like you'd be foolish. Like, it's just, a player that can really, really hurt you. It can win or lose a game. How his performance will probably go a fair way in dictating who goes through in this game. So I know Limerick don't do matchups necessarily, but the vast majority of other teams have to. It's by necessity. Like, I put it to you this way: if Drum win at the weekend and Seamus Callan goes to town and Kildangan haven't really gone after him, well then, like, that's just to me, that's just foolish. Do you know what I mean? So I think you have to go after, even if it's just one main matchup, and trust the rest of your players that they'll be able to win their battles against the other guys.
Yeah, so it's going to be a tight game, and Kildangan haven't been in great form, but they're the more recent champion. Drum and Inch won it back in 2011, a long time since they've won it. But the likes of the Campions that we've mentioned there, Tommy Nolan playing really well in corner forward, I think that should be a pretty close match. But Kildangan will have to get back to their old selves. If they do, they can win this game, especially after a terrible semi-final last year against Thurles. But Drum have been going well. The other one is Killarwan McDonough's against Upperchurch Drumban. We've already mentioned Upperchurch.
You hear that?
For the double. No.
Opportunity knocking. My God, this is some opportunity for the two of these. Seriously now. Like, Upperchurch have a chance of being in football and hurling finals. Killarwan have been back in a final since they won the All-Ireland Club.
They were back in a final the following year, and then Boris Lee beat them, and Boris Lee went on to win the All-Ireland. And no Tip team has won.
When Tip Club hurling was king, long time ago. But this is some chance for the two of them. This is some chance. And I just have a feeling that the stars are aligning a small bit for Killarwan. Even though Upperchurch are really battle hardened, they're going basically the Lochmore route from last year. I just don't know. I kind of have a feeling that the stars are aligning. The draw is after opening up for them, and in the same year that the stars have aligned for their neighbouring club, Shinrone and Offaly, I think Killarwan might just edge this one.
Yeah, I mean, talent-wise, they have the forwards. Like, they've Niall O'Mara at centre-back, and I think him and Gavin Ryan as the other number 6, that's going to be interesting to see who dominates more this game. But Keane Darcy is there. Obviously, he can score. Jerome Cahill, Keane O'Kelly, who's been a Tipperary under-20 in recent times. Cahill will hopefully return with Tipperary, I assume that Liam Cahill is going to be after him, but we'll see how that pans out. But the fact that they're still, Seamus Hennessy's knees are giving him bother. He came on the last day, scored 2 points, but he was kind of taken the other way by Josh McCarthy of Toom as well. Buggy O'Mara came in and finished a goal. Like, he batted the ball nice to the net, but obviously he's not at his fittest at the moment as well. And that they're using players that are probably, you can totally understand why you'd use them, but they're not at the full of their health at the moment as well, kind of tells you that they're probably kind of feeling like we've just about got enough players to get by here. They don't have the massive depth that they probably want. And over the years, they just haven't been trustworthy in big games. And Upperchurch won a county semi-final in football last week. I'm starting to lean towards them. They've got Paddy Green, I should say. They have the Jack Butler as a good target man and full forward. They've also got a couple of other, a couple of Shanahans. They've got a very good team, Aaron Ryan midfield as well. So I'm actually leaning towards Upperchurch to win that, even though Killarwan have more class. But I think if Upperchurch drag them into a dogfight, they'll win that game. But it's an exciting weekend at Tipperary hurling. There's also the relegation final, Aero Gannacarty Donahill against Templederry Kenyans. So much to get through here.
I think you might have questioned Killarwan's character there. If it's a dogfight, Upperchurch win. Listen.
Hey, look, give me the answer. Give me the answers.
No.
Ram it down my throat.
Recent history would suggest that now, I have to say. The fact that Craig Morgan is missing as well, like, jeez, he just would be such an addition to have, but they don't have him. And we've already said that, the teams that's probably most likely to win Tipperary are the team that survives without losing a big hitter like that. And the other three probably haven't lost a big hitter like that. I still think Killarwan will get the job done. I don't think they'll win Tipperary, but I think they'll get through to the final. Yeah,
the semi-finals in Dublin this weekend are pretty tasty as well. Ballyboden St. Enda's are against Kilmacud Crokes and Coola meeting Afina. I think Boden Crokes, I think the two teams are going to be looking to kill each other. I would have always seen both of these teams as great rivals over the years, and they are. But after meeting in the final in 2018, when it went to a replay, when you had, Gary Maguire doing that diving tackle out and Mark Howard and, taking his knee out, and they had a league clash that was decided by a point just a couple of months ago. That was actually March. Boden won. I think there'll be skin and hair flying. I wouldn't be shocked if there's a red card. I think it's going to be really physical. And Boden, they were pretty decent the last day out, but Crokes have been quite impressive. Even though I suppose Kilmacud did concede 3 goals against St. Vincent's with John Heatherton lording in disguise, so maybe you'd be looking to have Conal Keeney at the edge of the square and pump long ball into him and see how that goes. I'd be just about edging for Crokes here.
I would be the same, yeah. They obviously won a few years back when Ollie Baker was over them, but they got a bit of a monkey off their back last year, having been such a talented squad. Maybe they hadn't won a county title in.
Well, they'd lost 3 finals in a row.
Yeah, before that, I think Crokes. I think this. I do like anytime you play Boden, particularly in a knockout game like this, it's going to be an almighty battle. But I do see Crokes coming through, and I do see it setting up a Crokes versus Coola final. Nafina are coming, and they obviously could easily be defending county champions coming into this. But based on the form lines of convincing form and consistent form the whole way through the great group stages, Nafina are getting better, and I suppose a lot to do with that is they're getting most of their best players back on the pitch. But Coola do look a different proposition throughout the group stages this year compared to last year, where things looked like they were a bit disjointed and all over the place. And having Colin Cronin back, obviously, to me, is huge. I just think, and if there's any possibility that Micheál Donoghue's able to coax him back into the Dublin setup, I think it'd be huge as well, because I think not only is he a big player for Coola, I think he's a huge player for Dublin as well. And I expect Coola to come through by 3 or 4 in the other semi-final.
Yeah, and Richard Hogan here is asking who will pick up Con for Nafina, and we've already touched on it that Liam Rush went back to full back to negate the aerial influence of John Heatherton. I don't see that happening here.
No.
I'd say they'd like to have Paul O'Dea there, but I don't know if he's going to be back after. I think he might have suffered a broken wrist when the two teams met in the group stage. They'd like to have him, but I'd say Conor McHugh, who's obviously an excellent forward for the footballers, and he did a man-marking job the last day out. Who did he do it on?
He was out centre-back, wasn't he? Yeah,
he was out centre-back. I can't remember who he was man-marking. Rian McBride. So he might end up doing a man-marking job on him here, but
different job inside, isn't it? Different man-marking job.
You certainly wouldn't want Liam Rush playing full-back on Con. It just isn't a matchup that would work for them. Now, Coola won the group stage meeting between the two teams, but neither Colin Curry nor Sean Curry were playing. And when they did play together the last day out, they were both excellent, because Sean was out the field and he was loading the bullets for Colin inside, who's very nippy, fast forward, can win his own ball. I'm not 100% sure what the fitness situation is with Shane Barrett. He was another who went off against Coola. So that'll tell you how weakened they were in that game. But assuming Coola are at 100% here, there's no injuries, and the team sort of sorts out the resetting from the puckouts and the shape of the team that I thought was a little bit of a problem against Ballyboden in that final group game, which, they ultimately Coola won it in the last 15 minutes, which secured the semi-final spot. But there was definitely a little bit of a tweak needed to how the team set up. If that's sorted, I'd be going for Coola here. But Nafina and Crokes are both going for a county final double here. So and you've small bit of a crossover with Na Fianna, not too much of a crossover with Kilmacud Crokes. Brian Sheehy might.
Just a quick one, Shane. Who was full back for Crokes last year when they played Coola? Because I just remember the tactic of no way is Con getting inside. I don't care how many points he scores from the outside. It was that big rangy fullback. I just can't think of his name. He was a Jude player.
Brian Sheehy?
Yeah, that's the one. Yeah, and I just thought it was a really smart tactic. And whoever's in marking Con for Na Fianna, they're just going to have to not let him go inside. It's just because if he gets in on goals, if Coola hit a couple of goals, they win this game. If they keep him outside and he scores 4 or 5 from play, I think you have to hold your hands up and say fair enough. But they can't let him get inside.
Yeah, I'd imagine Conor McHugh will play from behind and they'll have someone else, maybe even Rush, just sweeping more or less in front. But then, like you said, you have the likes of Colin Cronin, who dragged Liam Rush out the field when they played in the group stages, and that's something that they can't really afford to have happen. Sean Baxter didn't start the last day. I would imagine he'd start for Na Fianna in this game. But 2 games that I think are going to be really good and really physical. So Limerick, the quarterfinals are on this weekend. There's only 2 quarterfinals. Kilmallock and the Piercing, they're already through to the semi-finals. And assuming that Patrick Swell and Doon win this game, you're going to have the same semi-final 4 for the 6th year in a row. So Patrick Swell against South Liberties. Patrick Swell will be well fancied there, and Doon will meet Kildimo Palace Kenry. That's the first time they've ever met in Championship. Now, Dara O'Donovan was sent off against Kilmallock for Doon, but that was 2 yellows, so he's available to play here. I can't see past Doon, even though, you know, Kyle Hayes has been having a brilliant season and lighting it up for them, and they have a couple of other really good players as well. But I can't see past them. And South Liberties may have Barry Nash, Anthony Nash, Brian and Tom Ryan, but again, even though Patrick Swell have had a couple of ropey performances, I think at this stage Keane Lynch is the only player that's out. They have 2 of the best players in the country, in Aaron Gillan and Diarmaid Burns. And they scored 7 of the last 8 points against the Dare to get to this stage. So they're starting to show a little bit of form.
Yeah, interesting one here. You know the way the B Championship links in with the Senior A? So no team has ever come in from the B Championship and won a quarter final. So the Liberties and Kildimo Palace Kenry are trying to book that trend. It's funny. I think if you had flipped the 2 semi-finals, I think if Kildimo were up against Patrick Swell and the form that they're in, I think they'd fancy themselves. Whereas South Liberties, it was kind of other results went their way. Now, don't get me wrong, they put up some good displays, but other results went their way to get this far. I do think, as Flash said there, I do think Patrick Swell are a little bit vulnerable, and they've been really inconsistent this year. But as you say, I think they have everyone back. You know, there was a few lads in the States or whatever. They have their strongest squad available to them, and I expect the 2 favourites to get the job done here, and for the famous 4 to be meeting in the semi-finals yet again.
Yeah. Let's see. Clare, we've already talked about the semi-finals there. The Mayo hurling finals on this weekend. Turin against Ballyhaunis. They've met in 15 in the last championship finals. Only a point separated them last year. Probably be the same here. Turin manager Ray Larkin kind of summed up their 25-year-old rivalry in the Mayo News, and he goes, "There's no pub in Turin, so you're going to end up in Ballyhaunis for a few drinks and end up sitting beside the lad you've been marking the day before." Then for Ballyhaunis, there's a return for one of their players, Chris McDonough. He's been away for 10 years, but the 39-year-old is back. And Donal O'Brien was saying that he's breathed new life into the Ballyhaunis camp. And he goes, you get someone like him back in, it adds a new impetus to the group. It just adds a bit of fun to the training. He's a larger-than-life character. Lads are looking forward to going training because of him. So this will be a cracker.
I think we need to get Chris McDonough on the show, but it sounds like he brings life and energy to anything. So listen, who knows? If they're celebrating, maybe we'd have Chris McDonough on Monday at lunchtime with a cup in his hands. I hope it's not like the Laois Cup where there's holes in the bottom of it and they can't have the sup out of it. But yeah, listen, they're fairly familiar rivals, shall we say, and the fact that there's no pub in Turin, I'd imagine those kind of things, they're probably seeing each other that often, and if they're drinking together, I'm sure there's a rivalry on the pitch, but I'm sure it's friendly enough after.
Yeah, the Armagh semi-final is on this weekend, a replay between Lough Jarrett and Cucullins. Sligo semi-final is on. Naveown meet Cooler Strandhill. In Down, Ballycran will meet Portaferry in the final there. That'll be a cracker. And also the final in Meath will see Trim against Ratoath. So there's quite a few finals going on, even if it mightn't be the most celebrated and storied counties in terms of hurling.
Yeah, Ratoath are going for the double as well. They're in with that list along with Naas and a few more. So that's going to be an interesting one. Ratoath and Trim, definitely. Yeah, like they're probably, those hurling finals are probably, maybe they won't get the coverage maybe at Kilkenny or whatever final will, but they still mean as much to the people involved there. And I there's a journalist there with the Racing Post, Brian Dowling, he's playing with Trim, and they're ardent hurling men there. Like, so that'll be an interesting final. It'll be interesting to see who comes out on top.
Yeah, so the Donegal final is on in the football this weekend. Nave Connell will meet St. Eunice. So Nave Connell beat Guidor by 13 points to 1-8 in the semi-final. So that's a 6th successive final for them, and that was their 9th successive semi-final. So it'll be interesting to see if Leo McClune is out, because he pulled up injured before the semi-final, and they also didn't have John O'Malley because of sickness. So I presume he'd be right at this stage, because it's 2 weeks on for them. Eunans and Kilcar played the other semi-final. That was delayed a week because of bereavements, and Eunans won that by 2 points, and Rory Kavanagh's obviously over them. Let's see if they win that game, or even if they lose it, will he be finally talking publicly about whether he's in for the Donegal job or not?
When will the press release come out?
That
Monday?
evening, maybe? Yeah,
Monday
yeah.
evening?
They'll probably give him the evening, yeah. Kerry, so last week, you and I, now there was a bit of miscommunication. We ended up previewing the Kerry quarterfinals on last week's show, even though they weren't till this week.
No, not at all. We were just like, there's big clashes in Kerry. We wanted to give it, a good 10-day lead in.
Yeah. Well, look, we've kind of already done it, so people can check last week's show probably midway through if they really want to see it. But the battle of Sean O'Shea and David Clifford is a key one, as East Kerry meet Kenmare Shamrocks. I think that one's on TG Cahir on Sunday. Yeah. Field Rangers against Austin Stacks. Dr. Crokes meet Dingle, and that's where AFL star Mark O'Connor is going to be lining out. And Mid Kerry against Temple Noe. Temple Noe will be doing fairly well if they were able to keep it going.
Yeah, but they've been going really well this year. They're obviously brilliant in the club championship as well. Like, it's mad. Like, we were talking about them in an All-Ireland junior final a couple of years ago, and here they are duking it out. Like, listen, we went through the East Kerry squad on paper before. There's probably stars are going to have to align. A lot of things are going to have to happen. Probably a couple of injuries, a poor performance, a bad day, and a few other things are going to have to happen for East Kerry not to win the Kerry Senior Football Championship here. But someone like Temple Noe, who've been tipping along nicely, and obviously have Crokes, who are, the traditional kingpins down there for the last 10 or 15 years, they're always going to be in the mix. But some fascinating quarter-final games this weekend.
Yeah, most certainly. Next county championship we're going to talk about is Galway, where we'll have the quarterfinals. Salthill Knocknacarra, managed by John O'Mahony, will meet Tuam Stars. That'll be a tight one, I'd imagine. Mount Bellew versus Corofin. So that's obviously the Kingpins, the All-Ireland 3-in-a-row champions from a couple of seasons back against the reigning champions, Mount Bellew. And when I watched them in that county final last year, Mount Bellew were more than good value for their win there. And they looked a team to me that could kick on and win a few of these. Obviously, the Pádraig Pearse's result went against them last year in the Connacht Championship. So I'd say they'd feel like we're going to kick on and we're going to really make good on the potential we have. But we'll see how that goes.
Very difficult championship to kick on in, isn't it? Like, this is star-studded. You go down through it. Salthill Knocknacarra, obviously, have John O'Mahony, as you said, as manager. Rob Finnerty is shooting the lights out. Corofin are on a bit of a revenge mission. Tuam are going very well. Mike Cullen were champions. Was it last year or the year before?
Year before last.
They're going well in both codes. But one of the more interesting ones is St. Michael's against Annadown. Annadown had to win by, was it 11 points to qualify? And I think the keeper hit a free with the last kick of the game for them to qualify. So, like, of 2 of the 8 teams that will be less heralded, one of them is definitely going to be in a semi-final. So there's a big opportunity there for either Michael's or Annadown.
Yeah, absolutely. So the next championship then we're going to talk about is, where was I? Kildare, Clane against Naas, county final. Naas looking to do the double. And I mean, last year they had to do a bit of a needs must, and a couple of the players, Owen Doyle and Eamon Callahan, had to take over the team. But at least it's not the double jobbing for those players anymore.
Yeah, I asked Owen Doyle about that, like, what was it like and what's it like not being manager? And he was like, it's a very cutthroat business. You lose one game, the Leinster final, and you're gotten rid of his manager. But Naas will have regrets probably from that Leinster final, and they'll fancy their chances. They'll fancy to have taken a good hop off Kilmacud if they were to beat them again. But they have to get over Clane at the weekend first. Eamon Callahan's still going strong. Doyle is obviously back fit. He missed all the Kildare inter-county season. But Clane have been tipping along nicely. Defensively, really, really solid. Tom Cribben is over them, who obviously, had been mooted to be the Kildare manager before Glenn Ryan was announced. They're yeah, they're defensively very solid. I'm not sure if they have the same type of attacking threat maybe that Naas have. Like I've waxed lyrical about him before, as of you. Like a big fan of Derek Irwin. Like I think over the next 3 or 4 years he could be one of the better forwards in the country if he probably stays injury free and is made more of a focal point in the Kildare attack. And I think someone like him, and with Leopard probably scoring a high percentage of his frees, I think Naas will get through. They know how to win these tight games now and have come through a tight semi-final and a tight quarter-final. I think Naas will come through. Joseph O'Hanlon just says there, is Anna down Damien Comer's club? It surely is. He scored a great goal earlier this year, actually, where he caught it with one hand. I don't know if you saw that. He just caught it like that and was able to score a goal, but he was influential in that last group game as well. But in Kildare, just about expect Naas to do the double and keep that double dream alive for a little longer.
Yeah, for sure. In Derry, it's going to be Sean O'Leary's Newbridge against Glen, who are the county champions at the moment. And Lavey will meet Schlockneil. Schlockneil obviously looking to regain that title that they haven't won for a couple of years, and be another club that will be hoping to do the double this year. In
the Glen Schlockneil final, Shane, that'd be a really, really appetising final, wouldn't it? In fairness,
it would be very tasty. I'm sure Newbridge and Lavey wouldn't agree, but it does feel like that's the one that's probably going to happen too. In Armagh, the semi-finals are on. Crossmaglen Rangers meet Mahary and Grainmore will meet Killeavy, so there are a couple of tasty ones there. In Longford, Mullinyochta St. Columba's will meet Columkill. So Gowna are the half parish up in Cavan who had that win over Crosserlough last week, and the other half parish, they're right there on the border between Longford and Cavan, is Mullinyochta. So must be some crack there if both teams were to win county titles. And actually, imagine if they met in an All-Ireland semi-final.
Just on that as well, there's 3 clubs surrounding Lough Gowna. So Gowna obviously are in the Cavan final, and Columkill and Mullinyochta are also surrounding Lough Gowna as well. And I got a little nugget from a Longford aficionado that Mullinyochta used to be known as what was it? Columkill East was what Mullinyochta used to be known as. So they obviously know each other very well. I don't think they've met in a county final in something like 50 years. I think this is the first time for them to meet in about 50 years. I know you've got a lot of information on this. Just think it's interesting. Mickey Graham is the one we probably associate with Mullinyochta and the miracle of Mullinyochta a few years ago. He's back in an advisory capacity, and they obviously have Keane Mackey as well, the Cavan star as well, who was playing with them last year as well when they won. Yeah,
so it'll be a tasty one because reigning champions Mullinyochta, and it's the first time they're playing their neighbours Columkill in a final since 1952. Mullinyochta looking for a 5th title since 2016. It's a 14-year gap for Columkills if they can win this game. And obviously Mullinyochta have been fairly dominant force, but like Columkills have generally pushed them fairly far and actually knocked them out in 2019 when Mullinyochta were looking to do a 4 in a row, and they beat them in a Division 1 decider earlier this year. Could be a good battle between Enda Mackin and Rian Brady. And Mullinyochta have been very good in midfield in most of their matches, but look, the opposition this Sunday is probably one of the teams that can physically stick with them, the likes of Fergal Sheridan and Jack Mackin. They're more than capable of holding their own against John Keegan and David McGibney. Barry McKeown will probably having missed the semi-final, or having missed the semi-final trouncing of Slashers, and that could be huge here. But it'd be hard to go against Mullinyochta considering the experience they have. Then Just
on that, the way someone described it to me in Longford is that they haven't been particularly impressive. What he says was they're waiting to be beaten. But if that's usually when a team is like that, it's a quarterfinal or a semi-final. Like their know-how and nous in a final is going to be hard to stop. And Columkill would be seen by some as maybe as underachieving a bit in Longford, but they're in a final now. If they're to get over the line, they're the sort of team that could win a couple. But I'd probably just be going for the experience of Mullinyochta. The McGivneys, John Keegan, Keane Mackey, probably just shaded a tight. I imagine it'd be tight though. Probably a 1-score game realistically.
Yeah, and just then in the intermediate final in Longford this weekend, Father Manning Gales will play at Ballymahan. And the reason I bring that up is because we're only a couple of weeks away from our coaching clinic in Father Manning Gales in County Longford. They're hosting it, but people from all clubs are absolutely welcome to come. Davy Burke, Oisin McConville and Colin Nally are all going to be there. And by the way, the other day we had a competition for winning 2 tickets to a coaching clinic. And I think given the amount of comments he's done and the good ones he put in on Monday, Richard Hogan, you've won 2 tickets to a coaching clinic of your choice. He's been commenting away regularly there today. So get on privately to Michael there. We'll organise the 2 tickets for you there. So congratulations to you. The Laois final is on this weekend. O'Dempsey's against Port Arlington. And look, like many other teams, there's like many other county finals that we've seen in semi-finals. Like I think last week, Clonmel Commercials against Mile Rovers, there's only 7 kilometres between them. These two clubs are even closer.
Yeah, familiarity or proximity often breeds contempt. So they're pretty close together, all right. So there's only 4 kilometres between the O'Dempsey's and Portarlington pitches, and most of the players would have gone to primary school together, and nearly all of them would have went to secondary school together in Colosh Disagon in Portarlington. So lots of friendships probably that will be put aside this weekend. Portarlington have been the dominant kind of force in recent years. Obviously went on a decent run in Leinster last year as well. They're going for 3 in a row, and they're going to be hard stopped realistically. They haven't had the biggest representation with the Laois County team in recent years, and I'm not sure if that's to do with just how strong they're getting at club level. But yeah, I'd be fancying Portarlington here to do the 3 in a row.
Yeah, Portarlington were very impressive for long spells against. Was it Naas or Crokes last year that eventually knocked them out? I'm just trying to think off the top of my head. I feel like it was possibly Crokes, but that they were.
They did impress. They ran.
Or was it Derek Irwin's late goal that beat them in Leinster? I just can't remember, but I remember being really impressed with them for long spells. Maybe somebody will comment there and let us know who won that or what way that game went last year. But they definitely impressed me for long spells.
No, they're a good side, yeah. They have the seatbelt as well, don't they? The seatbelt going across their jerseys. Drumcullen have that in Offaly as well. Richard Hogan just says Crokes, yeah. You definitely earned those 2 tickets for the coaching clinic, Richard, I can tell you that. John O'Sullivan says there's Senior A and Intermediate A finals this weekend. It really is jam-packed. The last couple of football games we need to go through. There's obviously the Laois football final, so it's St. Mary's against Newtown Blues, and then the Westmeath final. Go on.
Sorry, just before you go on, St. Mary's haven't won that since 1995, and Newtown Blues, they're the aristocrats allowed football, haven't won it since 2019. They'd won it 3 in a row back then. So, look, that'll be a tasty enough one.
Yeah, and the final in Westmeath will be tasty too. You have the Downs against St. Lomans. Ronan O'Toole was quoted in the Westmeath Independent during the week. Like, he basically said that the Downs had been the more impressive of the 2 finalists in the campaign to date. He just said definitely so. The Downs won all their games convincingly enough. Even the last day against Tir's Pass, when they were down to 14 men, they looked like they were in control of the game. And that was definitely a team, just even chatting to a few people that were at the game, being down to 14 didn't seem to upset them at all. They were just able to stick to their process there. O'Toole also says, who is probably a shoe-in to be an all-star on the Tailteann All-Stars this year after a brilliant season with Westmeath. He was asked whether the hunger is still there in Lomans, and he said it may be our 8th final in a row, but definitely there's still hunger. Anytime you go out on a pitch, you want to win. We all love playing football, and we want to win a 3 in a row. It's always a great day when you win the Paddy Flanagan Cup. It'll be very special to win it this year. He kind of admitted as much that they've had a bit of luck in the last 2 finals, that Gary Castle could have beaten them, and that John Hezon obviously forced extra time against Tir's Pass the year before that. And that's going to be an interesting final. I'd probably still be stumping for the experience of Lomans and the know-how of just getting it done in these big games.
Yeah, and I just read through a couple of the other fixtures that are on this weekend. The Wicklow final is on, Baltinglass against St. Pat's. Pats were champions in 18 and 19, and they faced off against 2020 champions Baltinglass. So both of those teams looking to get back on top. Carrigan will meet St. Mary's Ahagallen in Antrim. There's quarterfinals in Tyrone. Clonaux will meet Downach Moore, Nave Podrick. I know that's definitely a club that I should know the name of, but it's in the Irish, and now and again it catches us out. Actually, every time the Tyrone ones come up, I'm like, oh no, they have them all written in Irish here.
No, you've walked yourself into it. I'd say it could be Dromore, but I'm not 100% sure. You've Ergil Kieran against Dungannon as well. You've Oma St. Enda's. No,
it's Dunamore. That's what it is. Dunamore.
You've Oma St. Enda's against Dromore. My apologies.
Yeah.
And you have on Carrigmore, Nave Columkill. So it's Columkill against Loch McCrory, St. Teresa's, and then the semi-finals are in Roscommon as well. Your Roscommon Gaels, who I believe are managed by Frankie Dolan, who is a new selector with the Roscommon under-20s. They're playing Strokestown, and then you have Boyle against St. Bridget's Boiler, aiming to end a big famine run without a Roscommon title. And you also have the semi-finals in Fermanagh, Derry Gonley against Enniskillen Gaels, and you have Brian Barrows against Erin Gales Balik, and in Monaghan you have Roundtree, Castleblaney Fogs against Carrickmacross, Dunamine against Ahamullen. Semi-finals in Wexford as well. Castletown, who had a big win against Killenairn last weekend. They're playing St. James's. Matt O'Hanlon will be lined out for St. James's. Ben Brosnan, the main man with Castletown. and Shelmaliers against St. Anne's. Shells are managed by the new Wexford boss, John Hegarty, and they obviously have Owen O'Gara, the former Dublin star and multiple All-Ireland winner, lining out at number 14. I think that's our lot, Shane.
Well, Waterford as well. Clashmore Kinsale-Beg will meet Kilmacthomas. Portlaw meets St. Saviour's. Brick Walsh will be leading the forward line for Stradbally against Bricky Rangers. And the game at round is
Brick against Bricky.
Brick against Bricky, yeah. Kilrossity against Onrin. That's the game at round. Winners into the quarter-final, while losers will be at relegation final as 2 teams go down in Waterford this year. That's about the height of it for this Thursday show, isn't it?
Back on Monday. Looking forward to the fallout of the weekend. Another mad weekend ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks very much for watching, folks. And don't forget, if you already don't subscribe on any of our different social channels or on YouTube, please do. Thanks very much, Michael. Chat to you soon.
Cheers, Shane. Take care, Andy.